Today's episode, we are going to discuss one of my favorite topics, past life regression and reincarnation. The reason I think I enjoy this topic so much is because it offers hope. When you explore and experience the topic deep enough, there are all kinds of signs that point to an afterlife and existence beyond the physical body. Our guest today is a clinical hypnotherapist and certified Lives Between Lives practitioner. He has helped over 50,000 clients. He has specializations in trauma, fears, phobias, anxiety, and grief. He is author of Reincarnation is Real and 3 hours, 33 minutes in Heaven. I'd like to welcome Regan Forston. How you doing?
Thank you, Dan.
Nice to have you on the
That's
show.
good. Just one thing I'll clear up is I'm one of 200, and I think we have about 250 now because we keep training new people, therapists through the Newton Institute. And combined, we've done about 50,000 clients, including what Michael Newton did during his career. So
Okay.
we're carrying on the work. He passed away about 3 years ago now, started the Institute about 10 years ago, where he started training people. So we're carrying on his work and adding to what he's already discovered.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So how many people have you worked with, do you think, roughly over the
Well,
years?
yeah, I've been doing this now with Michael Newton's Institute for about 3 years, but I've been doing past life regressions for people starting back in about 11, 12 years ago. When I went to hypnotherapy school, well, actually, I was a comedian for 30 years before doing this. And when the market fell out in 2008, I was a corporate comedian, and they would pay me like $5,000 a show, and they'd fly me in. I'd do a custom comedy show for them as the way I raised my kids and everything. But when the financial thing happened, corporations just across the board, they just stopped hiring entertainment because they were laying people off and everything. So this God thing that I have going or something kind of led me to go to hypnotherapy school, completely change occupations, which was kind of strange for me, but that's how this spiritual stuff works. God kind of has a plan and he kind of leads you there, in some kind of roundabout way, sometimes a really direct way. And I thought I'd go to hypnotherapy school to become a stage hypnotist because, you could get bookings in theaters and do the same show for a year because you have different people every week with the same basic show.
Right.
But then when I realized how the mind works, and I was just blown away at how easy it is to get into the subconscious and to access this part of our beingness that we pretty much have no clue about. And I kind of wondered, why don't they teach us in schools? Because our subconscious is actually programmable, just like a computer program. And so something happened where I decided that instead of making people quack like ducks on stage, I'd try to help them with their issues. So I took the less profitable side of it, but it just seemed to be what I was going to be. So when I started doing it, occasionally people would come to me and say, well, do you do past life regression? And I thought, well, they had a class on it at school that I actually went to. And during the class, they did a whole group of the class, and we did a group past life regression thing. And I saw some stuff. And I went, whoa, did I just make this crap up or did this really happen? And then some other stuff happened that kind of confirmed in my life that was real. So I thought, this would be good. So I would always bring that up to clients. And then I was surprised at how much interest there was in it, that it seems like everybody kind of has this little like, well, I wonder could this be true, kind of thing. So I started doing it, and I was blown away right from the get-go at how easy it was for people to do this. Because I thought, well, you have to be, I don't know, there are only a few people would be capable of this. But it's now with the techniques I learned at the Newton Institute, about 84% of the people that come to me have a successful past life regression session. So I've been doing it steadily since 2009. I'm not sure exactly how many, but it's quite a few.
So where did this all start? Aside from the 2008, you said the market situation. I mean, was there some kind of spiritual awakening or something that happened to you in your life that it kind of led you to this journey?
Yeah, actually, yes. And in my book, in the 3 hours, 33 minutes in Heaven, I kind of give an account of how it started at 4 years old. Actually, one night I went to sleep as normal, And then all of a sudden I was awakened by something. And when I opened what I thought was my eyes, I was actually on the ceiling looking down at my body. And it scared me because here I am, and I know that's me I'm looking at down there, but I'm like on the ceiling looking down. And then all of a sudden I'm back on my body and I look up at the ceiling and I see kind of a globe of light. And then I'm back on the ceiling again looking down at my body. So the second time I came back on my body, I jumped out of bed and ran into my dad's room like scared, like, what the, what the F if I could have said that word at that age. But at a 4-year-old, you don't even know what to say happened. You just know
Right.
it happened. So my dad comes in my room. He says there's no boogeyman. He kind of thought it was something I got scared of, and then went back to sleep. Well, then it started happening every night, and it started scaring me so much that one night I decided I'm not going to go to sleep because I was afraid. So I laid in bed with I laid against my backboard, and I held my eyes open as a 4-year-old as long as I could. And then finally I shut my eyes. This is weird, but I remember this just like happened yesterday. I opened my eyes and there was 2 men standing in my room, and they were in white. I was not afraid at all. It's funny, you thought a kid would spook them out, but it was something comforting about them. And one of them smiled and looked at me, and telepathically, I guess, because I don't remember hearing a voice, but I remember hearing him in my head. He said, "It's okay. You can go back to sleep. We'll protect you." So I just felt comfortable, like it was like a grandpa or something there, just kind of making me feel comfortable. So I laid back down and went to sleep. Never had it happen again until I was 23.
Wow.
And then a teaching found me. I was just saying way because in a roundabout way, I wasn't looking for it, but this spiritual teaching found me, and they gave me some what called spiritual exercises that kind of help connect you to the other side. And I thought, well, let me try this because I remember what happened as a kid, and maybe I'm old enough to understand this now. So I did that for about 6 weeks. Then nothing much happened except I felt good doing these exercises. And then boom, one night I did the spiritual exercise and I found myself in another world, and I was full, just like talking like this. It's the neatest feeling. It's like you're totally conscious, just like this. And all of a sudden I'm seeing these yellow skies and these giant, oh, they were so beautiful. I only thought of them like oak trees because they had this big base, and they were just, it's like you just look at a tree and they were scattered throughout like these wheat fields in the yellow sky. And it felt like buckets of love were being dumped over me. And then all of a sudden I realized I was seeing 360 degrees, not like this, but I was seeing everything. And then part of me went, oh my God, I'm out of my body. And then boom, I was back in my
Wow.
body. But since that day, that my fear of death left. I knew that I was more than just this for sure, and it just felt like it was a wake up call for me of sorts that, to just start searching and finding everything out about God that I could. So, but when these things happen, they're so real that you wake up and you think, oh my God, this is so, it's just like it just happened right next to you and it was so real. And as time goes by, your mind plays tricks on you and you start thinking, did I just make that crap up? Was this some sort of hallucination or something? And so I asked God, this was about 15 years later, and it was starting to dim a little bit because I'd always thought about that, that experience. And a lot of other things happened in the meantime. But I asked God, I said, did that really happen? I said, can I have like some sort of miracle in this life, like touch it, like I, rather than in a thought or in a vision or something. So a few weeks later, I was performing on stage as a magician ventriloquist at a county fair, and the guy that came on before me was a storyteller, Columbia storyteller, and he would tell these stories about going down in the mines. He was dressed authentically like an old miner, Became good friends with him. Long story short, we became friends. He invited my wife and I to come up and see him in his cabin up in the mountains, and we did. I was there for 2 days. We had great talks, but we never talked about spirituality. We never talked about woo-woo kind of things. Just had a good time. So I'm getting ready to leave, and I'm getting ready to get in my car, and he puts his hand on my shoulders, and he says, I think you're supposed to tell me about your dream or your vision. And this has been 15 years since I had this thing happen. Instinctively, I turned around and I said, what color was the sky? He said, yellow. I said, what was I looking at? He said, the big, huge, magnificent trees,
Wow.
Oh man, I got weak kneed. He had to hold me up. He took me back inside and he says to me, he says, Regan, I just had a feeling that I needed to ask you because I seem to be the keeper of this experience for people. And he says, I don't know why, but people will come to me out of the blue when he said it happened a few weeks before where he had just given a talk he was a docent at Columbia, the Columbia Storyteller at Columbia State Park. And a man from another country came up to him and he says, I think I'm supposed to ask you about this vision I had. And he would say, what color's the sky? And the person would say yellow. And what were you looking at? The
Wow.
trees. Oh my gosh. So anyway, that forever and ever, I went, okay, God, I didn't imagine that this is really a real thing. It really happened. So it was kind of nice that I was allowed to have that, like doubting Thomas, from the Bible, and God says, okay, I'm just going to prove to you that this is all real.
So where do you think you were? Was it like another reality, another dimension? Was it heaven? What was it?
Well, since then, and because of the work that I do now, I know that it was probably just an aspect of heaven, like a place, because when I do the life between life thing, which we can get into in a little bit, you go beyond the past life regression, and it's 10 times more. Oh my gosh, when people have this experience, it's life changing because they not only go through a past life to get there, but they go to where they went in between their lives. And then once they get a healing from that past life that I just took them to, then they're able to go before counsel and say, hey, what about my life now? I have them prepare a whole list of questions. And there's this wise counsel that appears to all of my clients, and they can ask any question they want.
That's funny. I actually have a question about that. Yeah, that's great. So let me ask you this. The visitors by the bedside, were those your spirit guides, do you think?
Well, since then, I think because of other guides I've had that have helped me in these spiritual exercises that this spiritual teaching gave me, it's actually called Eckankar. And I'm not here to try to change anybody's beliefs or anything, but that's what woke me up. Is they pretty much said that, everybody has this inner guidance, has a right to this inner guidance that God's always giving you. And the way to contact it is it's like deep meditation, these spiritual exercises they give, and you get to a certain point that you kind of open the door a little bit. And I've had teachers or guides that somehow, now that I've seen them in my mind, and I go back and I go, well, I think that may have been them, but I don't know. But it was definitely something angelic or something of a good positive nature.
Now that 360 view that you mentioned, that comes up a lot in like near-death experiences and stuff like that. Did you have like a sense of an all-knowing or anything like that when you were in that space?
Well, it was more a sense of just love, like instead of feeling like a being or a person or an entity, it was more like having a shower, and what was coming out of the spigot was just love pouring poured all over you, where you just feel this deep sense of belonging, like your home, like maybe you've been, like a guy goes on an adventure for 20 years and he finally comes home, and that feeling they have, like, oh, this is my home, kind of thing. And my clients experience that too. But in these journeys that my clients go to, they see many worlds or many places, like whether it be in other dimensions or there are other slices or other little bits of whatever is in the afterlife. And especially if it has to do with healing, like a lot of times my clients have healing issues, and I'll ask this teacher they're with, I'll say to my client, I'll say, ask your guide there if you can go to a place of healing or rejuvenation. And every time they go, sure. And then instantly when you think it, you're there in this place. And one of mine in particular was a young man, I'll call him Leo, a young 28-year-old that came to me because he was having like 28 seizures a day. Can you imagine that? You're just like, we're talking now, and all of a sudden you just go out and then you come back. He couldn't work. When he would walk in the room, he just has this angelic energy about himself. He's just such a beautiful human being, but he couldn't have relationships, couldn't work, couldn't drive, or anything, And psychologists, they couldn't find anything physically wrong. And they said, well, maybe it's something psychosomatic. So go to a hypnotist and maybe he can regress you in this life and find out, did something kind of happen? Well, long story short, we did find a little bit of abuse that he had when he was younger that may have had something to do with it. But then in the next session, I told him about the reincarnation thing. Maybe we could find something. He says, I'm open to it. So, we did the life between lives thing where we went to through a past life easily, which as far as past life regressions, most people that do it, when they come out of it, they go, gosh, I was just a simple peasant, or I was just a normal person. They weren't something like Cleopatra or some king or something. They were just like you and
Right.
I right now, regular guys,
Yeah.
and had life happen to them. And but it's interesting enough because of and I know we're hitting a lot of different aspects here of things, but in the past life regressions, a lot of times people, one thing I ask them when they see their mom and their dad or their wife or kids, I'll say, look real careful and tell me if their energy reminds you of anybody that's in your current life now.
Right.
And they usually go, oh my God, that's, like the mom might be, oh my God, that's my sister in this life, or that's my mom is that's my baby daughter, so and so. And they do it so naturally, and they feel it like it's so naturally that after this happens with client after client after client after client, you start realizing that they're getting a bigger picture now that people that are in your life now have probably been in your life before.
Right. Like
Like
a
they're
soul
like
group.
you're like an acting group or
Right.
your troupe, and
Right.
everyone's taking on a different part so you can learn different things.
Hmm.
So it kind of freaks some people out sometimes, and they go, "Oh my God, there's my mom, and now I'm married to her in this life," and they have a hard time connecting that, like if you thought about in this life now that you're married to your mom, it would be kind of gross. But when you look at it in the bigger aspect of soul, how it works, and you're each taking on new roles in that, then pretty soon it becomes just normal and natural, and it makes most sense.
And it's a
It
it's a
makes a
really
lot of sense.
beautiful thought,
Yeah,
because in this lifetime, if you know some really wonderful souls or spirits or whatever you want, whatever you want to call it, it's nice to think or know that you're possibly going to share another lifetime with them.
yeah, it is. And I've had people come to me for the life between life experience, especially. I'll give you an example of I had a client it's been about a year ago now. She came to me, but 6 months prior to that, her husband had committed suicide and hung himself in the garage. And she just knew this was her soulmate. She loved this man so deeply and so much that she was having trouble moving on from that. She couldn't comprehend how horrible this was and everything. And someone told her about me, and they said, "Well, can you help me talk to my husband?" I said, "Well, let's just give it a try. It depends on how hypnotizable you are, which most people are." I told her. So she came. She went boom right into a past life where she saw she had a relationship with him, which was interesting. She saw herself die in that past life, and then what we do in the life between lives thing is when they're looking down at their funeral, like kind of hanging around to see what's going on. Then basically we say, well, turn around and see who's there. And when they turn around, they go, oh my God, there's my mom who passed away, or there's a guide or somebody right there for him. And I'll say, we start communicating with the guide and say, would you take us to where they go between lives? And the guides, most of the time, will say, sure, let's go. And so when she got there, she requested, there was she looked at it as like an angel, the guide or something. We asked if her husband was anywhere around. They said, yes, if you'd like to talk to him, you may. And all of a sudden there he was in front of her. And boy, for me as a therapist watching her and the emotion that happened, he was there. I mean, she was just crying and bawling, and she was saying, oh my God, you're there. And it's surprised how many times I'm crying right along with my clients, because this is such an emotional thing, which makes this
It
experience
is.
real to people.
That's the thing that I can't get past, and I can't emphasize enough. If somebody hasn't had one, if you have had one, the feelings, the emotions, the senses, sometimes even you can pick up on smells and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and it's real.
Unless you've had the experience, it's really easy to kind of poo-poo it, like, oh, and I have had a few clients that just came to me and they says, well, I want to prove if this is real or not. And I'm asking them questions, and they would see themselves, they would be this other person, they would see them at work, and they would be doing all these things. But then when they come out of it, they go, I think I just made all that up. And I go, well, I said, that's up to you to figure out. So if some person really doesn't want to believe it, or if they've been if they've had an upbringing that just says that this is not true so much, and they're so brainwashed to that fact, it's a
Right.
little hard for them to break through that mold sometimes. But once it does, then it's amazing what
Some of the
happens.
some of the fascinating ones are the ones that I think I've even actually had personal experiences with people that have had them done, is they might speak of another culture, another time in history that they had no clue about in this
Yeah.
lifetime. And then, after doing a little research after the fact, find out that, they knew things that they really shouldn't have known.
Yeah. And for people that really believe they've lived before and had a little experience in that, when I take them to a past life, that's almost like an antidote because they want to go to the life between lives thing and get some information on their current life and everything. But just for the heck of it, sometimes we've done some research together. I'll give you a good example. I have a client that suffers because I have a regular therapy practice, and it seems like the people that find me a lot of times are women that have PTSD from rape, incest, and violence that they've had in their lives, and it's completely shut them down, And just in doing regular therapy, another show would be actually to do one on the tapping or the EFT, which is like the closest thing to a panacea that psychologists have ever found that cures, or I'd say cures, but it gets people healed pretty quickly, like sometimes 3 or 4 sessions, which would have normally taken years with regular psychotherapy, because this energy medicine, it just works. I see people just like get healed right in front of my eyes where they're like this thinking about an issue, and then a half an hour later they're talking about it like we're talking now, and they can feel like they can function again, all in one session sometimes, but anyway.
Mhm.
So she came to me for that. She was not open to hypnosis at first because of her religious upbringing. She thought it had to do with the devil a little bit, what she was told.
Mhm.
But because we built a good rapport, and I would mention it to her every once in a while, and she'd say, okay, I think I want to try this, So we did, and all of a sudden she's giving a speech as a woman, and there's a whole bunch of other women out there. And I said, what is the speech for? He says, they're giving me some kind of award for me working on women's rights or something. And then she's laying there, and all of a sudden she goes like this. And I go, what happened? And she goes, some guy just threw a tomato at me and hit her, some male chauvinist, I guess. But it didn't bother her, and she went on to give her speech. Well, then, because on the other side there's no time and space, and it's cool because it's just like when you're video, you can go, okay, I want to go back on the video to 2 minutes, boom, you can go there, you can go ahead anywhere in between. And that's a little hard concept for some people, but once they've experienced it, they realize. So when she was this thing, I had her go back to childhood. We learned a lot of things. And then I said, what were you doing with the suffragettes? I guess I forget how to pronounce that exactly. She says, well, I work for the Boston Herald. And she never, when I had her out, she'd never heard of Boston Herald. She's never heard of any of those things at all. But we did some research, and we found out that when I asked her what year it was, she says, 1888, 1890, something like that. So we went back, we thought, well, let's research that time because that's not too long ago. There might be something. And we found out that the name of the newspaper she said was that name at that time, but it's since changed many years later. So, that she went, I didn't know anything about that. It was
Right.
cool. And then we did research, says, well, what were they writing on? And it was women's rights at that time. And they had just a few women reporters, but we never did go further than that to try to find out their names or something like that. But then I said, well, some other interesting thing is she went to Harvard. I said, where did you learn to write? She says, I went to Harvard. And this woman in this lifetime has just gotten through high school, Okay,
Right.
she went to Harvard. And I said, okay, 1, 2, 3. I tap her on the forehead. You're in one of your classes. I want you to look around and see what you see. And in the bed, she goes, there's only 2 women in here, and they're all guys, like this. So we did more research. We found that at that time, Harvard had just started letting women come to the college, and there was only a few. So,
Wow.
okay, that was enough for her. She says, that must have been me,
And
So
that's another thing too. When these people are under hypnosis like that, they tend to like stay within the guidelines of the same story or timeline as you move them around. So I have a hard time believing that it's all made up or it's just something that's in the subconscious, because
yeah.
when you jump them to a different point in that lifetime, things usually stay pretty consistent with what's going on, right?
Yeah, I've taken somebody back to the same lifetime several times because we wanted to explore more. And sometimes it doesn't always add up to the same. It's always generally the same, but sometimes their life is a little bit different. So I don't know. I don't know how to equate that, but with talking to other therapists that do what I do, they say sometimes people, even when you take them to a past life, because there's no time and space, is sometimes they're giving you information from several different lives, but they're just memories because they're all right there, for them to see. And so they get things just like right now, if I asked you, Dylan, I said, hey, let's go back to when you're 12 years old to this incident that you were there we're at with a brother or sister or something, and then you describe it all to me, and then we ask your brother sister, and they have a whole different view of everything that went on.
Right.
And so, but you have the gist of it, of what, sometimes it's just a feeling you have or something more than. So sometimes these past life things, you can go back and find exact things. And sometimes you get generalizations, or you get close, where you go
Mm-hmm.
close enough,
Mm-hmm.
but for people, some people will say to you, well, someone's in hypnosis, they're taking suggestions from the therapist who's having to make it up in their mind or anything. But then that doesn't account for the work that the University of Virginia is doing, which you may have heard of for 40 years, where
Yes.
it's about children who remember their past lives. Well, they have over 2,500 cases now of kids who not in hypnosis, but just would tell their mom and dad, Mom, I was big one time, or,
Right.
or something. And then the university's gone, interviewed them, and then been able to corroborate what they said, sometimes even down to the exact address where they live. And the kids have been able to walk in the room and go, one of them, her husband was an old man now, but was someone he was married to at the time, and could talk about the conversations they had when they were married together.
Right. Yeah, they're
So,
doing great work.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's touch a little bit on the life in between lives.
Yeah. I tell you how much this excites me, because I had an operation about a month ago. As something came up, I had a hernia, and they thought it was constipation, but it got to hurt so bad one night that I just went to the emergency room, and they took a scan or whatever they did, and they go, "Oh my God, 6 inches of your intestine is poking out where it's not supposed to."
Oh,
And so they kept me there and did the operation the same day, because it could have been life threatening. And I I remember I'm trying to think. I'm losing my train of thought. Hang on. What was the question? What we were talking about just before? Because
just
I'm going
lives
into.
in between lives.
Oh,
Just
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so they weren't letting me out of the hospital for 3 days because my blood pressure was dangerously low. Uh, but I said, well, maybe it's just because I learned in hypnotherapy school how to really zone out. Like when I was going through this immense pain and everything like this, I naturally now go to like a cave, and it's like an inner cave where I go, where the pain isn't so great and I can handle it, and I'm kind of zoned out like some other place. So the nurse started talking to me about what I did for a living and everything. I started talking about this life between lives thing, and she goes, let me take your blood pressure again. And it had jumped like 20 points when I started talking about this. She goes, something's wrong here, because that doesn't normally happen. And I go, well, maybe so. So the next hour before they took my blood pressure, I just started talking to her about the life between lives things that she tested. She goes, you're good to go. So I said,
oh
maybe
wow.
it just was weird for her. I did a Hollywood, I was an actor. I did tons and tons of movies when I was in Hollywood for a while. And one of the ones, I was a guy that was supposed to be coming out of a coma after 4 years. They had me at a Kaiser hospital and had a doctor standing next to me. It had me hooked up to real stuff, you know. And the guy was standing on my bed with the camera down at me. When he said action, I'm supposed to come out of a coma. So I thought, oh yeah, let me go real deep here. So I just went really deep, in my mind. And then the guy says action, and I came out of it. And when I was done, the doctor was looking at the machines or something, tapping on them and stuff. I says, well, what happened? He said, well, something weird happened here, because just before he said action, you just went way the hell down here, and your heart beat like you're dead or something almost. And then it popped back up. And I said, oh, I just learned to do that in hypnotherapy school. And the doctor goes, yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. Like I kind of believe you, but that kind of was proof to me that of the power of the mind, how you can regulate your body things. I once was at a Buddhist retreat one time, and the monk took us out in the snow. He was in his underwear and he laid down in the snow. We came back about 20 minutes later, and he had melted the snow all around him. And he said it was by raising his body temperature to melt the snow. And it was one of those things where you start realizing, man, our minds are way more
That's
powerful than we give them
intense.
credit for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure we got a real grip on what our actual reality really is.
Yeah. It's, and in a way it's a little depressing, but in a way it's so freeing, because the more we found out about the other side, the bigger the picture gets and the more small you feel in a way.
Yeah.
Because when I ask people on the other side, well, where's God? We're in heaven, with them, and then where's God? And even the teachers and everybody there just go, oh, somewhere up there. In other words, he's beyond heaven almost. In other words, what people frequently say when we ask them about God, they call it the presence. In other words, they feel the presence stronger than here on earth, like way bigger, because it's just all about love there. But it seems so far, and now we're still doing research, and maybe we'll find something else, but it just seems like God is just so big that he's way bigger than heaven, even, that there's this presence and that there's other levels above where we take people to.
Yeah. And
So
perhaps it exists in everything, right?
yeah, like in everything, and it's once in a while I get somebody whose consciousness doesn't want to accept this really bad, and they want to tell me I'm going to hell and stuff, and whatever. And I say, well, because the one thing we found out over on the other side, because some people have asked about hell and everything, and basically there's no hell.
Yeah.
However, there's a balancing of the books, so to speak. So in other words, it's the goal is as we found out over there, is for people to evolve and become more godlike, okay,
Yeah.
to become more loving. And the way to
There's
get
a
there
karma
sometimes is,
aspect to it, right?
yeah, like, and it's the people, like when people are before the council over there, let's say they planned a life to go down and accomplish something, and they got seduced by all the stuff that's down here that seduces us, it takes us off task and everything. And sometimes people really blow it, and they get up, they die, they get to heaven, and so they're standing before the council, and it just picture like you or me up there, and we go, oh, I blew it. God dang, oh, what am I thinking? I thought I could go down there and do this, and I blew it.
Right.
And so they will sometimes they will say that they need a timeout, they need to regroup, they need to go back and, in other words, get some more classes before they go down and do it again. And some of them will kind of self-exile themselves to like a purgatory, to like a place where they can like regroup and before they try again. And in Earth years, it could be hundreds of years that they're in this place, as far as Earth years goes, but there's no time and space up there, but that's how we equate things. So then they come back and try it again. One woman client that another therapist had a woman, and she found out she came down to this body. Her mission was simple. It was to learn patience. In other words, her whole lifetime learn patience. And he had a follow-up question. He says, well, I mean, were you practice in other lifetimes, or like in Earth years, like how long have you been learning patience? And she goes, 500 years. So
If you let me ask you
sometimes,
a question. If you're not
yeah,
on task, um, do you believe perhaps there's exit points in,
pardon?
like if a soul or a spirit is not on task with their goals that they've come here to accomplish, um, do you believe like there's perhaps exit points, places to kind of get off the train
Oh,
and
you mean like to leave their body and just come back again?
yeah, to die or to, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, in my experience so far, what I'm surprised at, because people come to me and they've had crazy lives, this happened, and they feel like they're failures or whatever. And when they ask if they're on task, the majority of the time they get, yes, you're on task. You're supposed to be going through this stuff. So just keep at it, just keep at it because you're doing it. I have had them tell a few people, someone who's very close to me, I had have the experience, and they told her, he says, well, you're on task, but you need to step it up. In other words, that to really get really with your mission right now, you're coasting a little bit now, and you need to like light your fire again and really get going. And that's what she did when she came back out of that. She says, yeah, I've kind of felt that I'm kind of coasting a little bit, and that I, in other words, need to jump back on the fire again.
And when you say they, you're referring to the council
Yeah, the council.
that's in between lives?
Yeah. So because with these kinds of conversations, they kind of go in spurts, and then we get off task. Let me, for anybody who's watching or something, I'll give you just a brief of the life between lives thing about its purpose and everything. Okay. So the way we found through the Newton Institute technique that we can get people there very easily is to have them go back into memory to a past life where they experienced a past life. We have them see themselves pass away. And then what we do is have them, turn around and see if there's a master, a teacher, someone, a guide or something. And then from there, we kind of make this connection. We take them, like if their past life they went through was kind of difficult, which a lot of past lives were, they go to a place of rejuvenation or healing until they kind of feel like they're rested a little bit. And then when they come out and they've gotten healing from that lifetime, we ask permission for them to go to their soul group. Now, every one but one of my clients so far has been able to go to their soul group, and that's your players, your acting troupe that you're with mostly. It's the souls you're most close to. I've had it be anywhere from 6 souls to like dozens. Like some people have bigger plays, have bigger something there. When we get there, here's the thing that makes it real for people because they don't think of this ahead of time. They experience it in a whole different realm of reality, in a sense that things aren't like they are down here. Like I'll say, okay, you wanted to speak to your mom. Is your mom there? And they go, yes, she's here. And now that I talked, she's right in front of me. And I'll say, what does your mom look like? And sometimes they'll just say, she's this blue or purple or yellow or orange glowing energy in front. So they're actually, in their mind, seeing their mom, but it's just a bunch of energy. But when I'm talking to them, that's their mom. So they have this ability to recognize them as soul, as this energy. And then sometimes they'll see their mom. Their mom will kind of morph, and they'll see maybe the half part of her is like what she remembers down here, but usually they're younger and healthy and vibrant, And sometimes it's full body. It's different all over the place. But when they come out of it, a lot of times they go, I couldn't have made that up. I was seeing my mom and she was this beautiful energy, but I never thought of seeing my mom as energy. And like, how did I know that was my mom? And she said, I just knew, and they would say. So prior to doing an LBL experience, I give them homework and I have them make a list of the cast of characters in their current life. And I have them write a paragraph about the person. Like, is this an adversary of yours, or is this, someone that you just feel really close to, like a soulmate or loving, whatever. So we get to see in their play, there's always the adversary somewhere there, someone who it's hard to be around, or someone that pisses them off all the time, or someone they go, oh, I wish I could kill this person, Well, we have that cast of characters.
That adversary is not necessarily an adversary in the next life, though, right?
No.
It could be a different role, right?
No, I've had sometimes where their soulmate comes down to be their husband or wife again to give them hell. In other words, to really, that divine sandpaper, in other words, to lay it on heavy. And I'll tell you, that is so cool sometimes, because when people are on the other side and they realize the reason why people are so difficult with them in their life, it's a game changer for them. They start looking at their whole situation differently. I had a client of mine who's a nurse, and there's 3 doctors she works with during the week. There's one doctor that every time he comes in, he does something horrible to her out of sight of people. He'll take her aside and he'll tell her she's a piece of shit or something she should never, and for no reason, because she's been doing it 24 years. Everybody else loves her. Before going into work, she's in her car. She gets panic attacks because she's going to be there because he's going to do something horrible. So she wrote that down. I got to find out what's going on with this guy. So she's before the council, and his name rhymes with Rotten Man. She calls him Dr. Rotten Man. And so we says, okay, what's this deal that she has this person who's so cruel to her for no reason at all, that's making her life difficult? The council just quietly and lovingly just said to her, you were very cruel to him in another lifetime. That's all that they said. And she's, because of this life between life thing, you have a split screen, and you're on the couch, that I'm talking to you, that you're there, but at the same time, just like right now, where we're looking at split screen right here, it's like one of you's there and one of you's there, only it's both you, and you're aware of it. So the part that's here is aware of that. When the council told her that, her face, this grimace, she goes, I did not want to hear that. I did not want to hear that. It was mean to him, And we talked about it afterwards. And long story short, though, I talked to her 6 months later, and they don't have any issues anymore. He says, I didn't say anything to him. He didn't say anything to me, but he's not being cruel to me anymore. And I said, that's because you changed something in yourself that's not allowing that to happen anymore. And you've probably finished your karma, or you've probably finished whatever you had to do with
That's
them.
interesting.
It was beautiful.
Do you think
And she was happy.
his higher self was aware of that as well? Maybe.
Maybe on some level, but that's the thing sometimes. Uh, I read a story, this was published in a spiritual magazine, where uh, a man had a 3-year-old daughter that got the flu. They took her to the hospital. A nurse accidentally gave her the wrong stuff and killed her. And this was a very highly spiritual man, but he had feelings like he wanted to kill that nurse. Like, how dare she be so stupid? She kills my little girl. Well, he asked God for, like, can you tell me what's going on or anything? And he did it the way that a lot of people do it, because when they have this inner connection, kind of like, so he went to sleep, and in that dream, he saw a dream where his daughter had accidentally killed that woman in another lifetime due to some negligence. And then his daughter appeared to him in the dream and said, Dad, I'm okay. I'm okay. I just came down here to balance the books between me and this nurse or anything, but I'm in heaven and I'm totally fine. Well, and this happened to him in a dream, but he'd been a long believer in dreams, and he had teachers and masters come to him and teach him things in the dreams and things. So that helped him to let go, and he realized everything was just as it should be.
It's interesting. And perhaps
anyway,
from his perspective, he needed to have a loss such as that.
Yes, that too.
Because I think it's all interconnected. It's not just about one person balancing books. I think that's also possibly, what do you think on this? The reason why we all have different roles in each lifetime. It's kind of coordinated in a way, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, you would think it's
or synchronized.
Like people would go, well, this was coincidence, and then you go synchronicity, and then you go, this is just meant to be. That's the step when you realize that pretty much everything is kind of meant to be. Now, once people go to their soul group, then usually their teacher or guide is in the room there with them, and we'll say, ask your teacher and guide if you can go before the council. And they go, sure. Boom, we're at the council. And the council appears to people all kinds of different ways. Sometimes there's 3 people, sometimes there's 20 people. They're dressed differently. They seem to appear to the person in a way that's best for the person that's before the council. For my client, like I had one of my clients, she does not get along with adults. I mean, she's very dysfunctional around adults, but children, she is like a Pied Piper with children. She just loves kids. She loves teaching kids. She doesn't get along good with adults in the adult world. Well, the council, they were all little midgets. And they came in and sat down, and they sat down in beanbag chairs, and she was so comfortable with that. And to back up, when she was in her soul group, her mother, the people that were in her life now, all appeared as children to her. In other words, she saw them as children that came, because that made, she was comfortable, and they were doing that, I think, so she could have the best experience, that way. So it's interesting. When I had the experience, like in the book, which we'll talk about maybe sometime, or I'll tell people how to get it to 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven, that was me being there. And the council, I had 6 people on the council. They had hoodies on, and except for the one in the middle, he had like a little Chinese hat on, and I recognized him from someone I'd seen in when I was in deep meditation or prayer before. I call him Late C. He was a Chinese master, and he was kind of like the officiator, And he said, I asked him like what my mission was, and he said, you'll get verification of that soon, which I did later on in the experience. And I asked a list of questions. Am I on task? And they said, yes, you're definitely on task. They said, we like that you're learning to help people come to see us, to be before the council, because it's so helpful for people. So that gave me confirmation. And then all of a sudden, the hoodie went down on the one next, and it was a lady master. I think I call her Kari Daka, something like that. And she said, Regan, I'm very proud that in this lifetime, you've helped develop the feminine energy in yourself. And that, when I'm under hypnosis or anything, I just felt my heart just boom, because that's one thing that in my book, it talks about this, where I came to realize that I didn't give the feminine part of myself any credence really at all. And I realized that was dysfunctional, and that I needed to work on that. Long story short, after I realized that, 3 days later, I meet a woman at clown school at the University of Wisconsin because I was going to teach there. We fell in love and I married her, and she had 4 daughters. So for 10 years, I'm immersed in femininity with 5
Nice.
women. And I realized this was all about helping me develop the feminine side of myself, you know. So sometimes, you know, gosh, I started crying at movies. I started communicating my thoughts and feelings and all that stuff, you know. And so to hear that over there, and I realized that was one of my goals when I came down, because there's not just one goal. Like your mission is usually multifaceted. You have a major goal, and then with me, it was a few minor goals. And so to hear that, and that made me feel like, and they said, you're right on task, you know, and then just shortly, another master put his head back and he goes, I'm the guy that appeared to you about 10 years ago that kind of helped you when you were trying to decide whether to marry the woman with the 4 girls, you know. And I went, oh, I said, okay, thank you, you know, and that was all that was for him or something. But it's different for other people. So people go to a soul group usually. They usually go to get answers to their current life's questions about what their mission is. Are they on task? A lot of times they'll say, is there any spiritual path I should follow? Sometimes they'll say, okay, tell me what the best religion is. What's the right one I should be following? What's the one true religion? And they always get the answer, the one you choose for yourself. And that made the most sense to me than anything, because depending on what your mission is and everything, you may need to be a Jehovah's Witness to go through the experience of that and to see God from that angle for you to learn. So whatever, this should put people at ease. They don't have to keep searching for something unless they're not comfortable, or they have to then search for something that you feel like, wow, I'm home, or this is what I really need. Otherwise, but the main thing from that is we're all entitled to our own beliefs, and we shouldn't push those beliefs on anybody else, because they may have that, my belief may not be what's best for them, you know. So then from there, like I've had a few people that were artists, musicians, and we say, is there a place they can go to up here that can give them some insight or something into what they're doing as a musician? And me, I'm a musician also. And in mine, Rebazar, that was the name of my guide, Rebazar, yeah. And he said, yeah, I'll take you. So all of a sudden I'm in this big temple. There's all kinds of rooms. And he says, I want you to go in that room over there. So instantly I'm there, and there's this music of like the most beautiful violin you've ever heard. And he was playing it. When I looked around, he was playing this instrument there. He said, sit in this chair. And then he gave me this visual image. He says, anytime you want to create, I want you to picture yourself sitting in this chair in this room. And then he had a fishing pole and he went like this. And then he came back and you could see all these notes like on a scale, you know. And he said, this visual image of you will help you to be creative. And ever since that happened, that's what I do. And I have a new song that comes just out of the blue. I mean, it's kind of amazing that way. So I've had people go to artist rooms, and one of my artists, they said, this is how you need to paint. And they showed like a child painting all crazy like this. And they said, you need to get back to paint like you're a child, you know, with the you know. And my client says, you know, God, I needed to hear that, because I've gotten so technical that everything has to be exactly this way, and I got to have this technique. And they said, let go, just be, you know, just be yourself, and you're going to be more creative, you know. So another station that we've discovered, gosh, I want to say 8 different stations that are common, but sometimes people go to 3, sometimes they go to 4, sometimes they're a mixture of ones, but one of them is the library. And people always describe the library very similar when they're there. It's just like you're in this library, and as far as you can see up and around are volumes and volumes of books. One of my clients last month, the teacher there says, I want to show you something. And she says, okay, had her sit in this chair. He went and got this book. He opened it up before her. And I said, what does the book look like? And he says, he's opening, and they're just light. Every page is just light. And somehow I know what's on the page. He says, I can't quite explain it, but it's all of my past lives or something that I needed to see. And he kept turning, and it was page after page of light. And it was weird. It was like somehow on some deeper level, she was taking in all this, but on a physical human level, when we talked about it afterwards, she says, I don't know, I just felt I just saw my whole self, you know. And then the other main place people go to, the life selection room, which they describe very similar. It's like being in a big movie theater and have different screens. and it's where people go when they're going to choose the next life that they're going to experience. And this is sometimes people are there at the memory when they chose the life they are now, and they say, "Oh my God, I got to see who my mom and my dad was." And then when I knew what this life was going to be, I went back to my soul group and I said, "Hey, can you go down in this life and help me do this and this and this?" And people kind of come together, to like be in their play.
Is that also where you do the life review or no?
Yeah, well, the life review, a lot of times it happens between the council, but a lot of times it happens little by little at the different stations they go to. All of a sudden, another piece of their life comes together, and they go, "Oh wow, that's why I'm doing this now," or whatever. And because we're continuing the research of Michael Newton now, and there's 250 of us now, so we get together once in a while and share what we've learned. And I won't get into the alien thing, but there's a whole bunch of that coming around now. It's would be a whole show almost about what people are getting about how we came to this planet, what's going on, and everything. And
That's fascinating.
yeah, it's to me when I hear some of it, I go, "Oh, it's a little over me," but then I go, "Okay, I got to be open here," So the more we get. So one question we ask people now on our list, besides, we'll say, "How many lives have you lived before?" And people usually will give us some sort of a number. And we'll say, "Have you ever incarnated or lived on another dimension or planet or any place else besides Earth?" I'm blown away how instantly they'll say yes. Like I'm just asking you, did you live in Cincinnati instead of Columbus before? And you go, yeah, like that. And then I'll
Right.
say, can you take me there? And we'll ask a few questions and about that. And it once you start, the bigger this picture gets, the more you see that when we're in our true self, we're energy. We this energy can be in anything we want. If we want to experience anything.
And that's actually gonna one of the questions I had for you is, since we are all energy, and when we're in that state of where you said like it's like home, that heavenly place that feels like home, then what exactly do you think this reality is in these other dimensions, and even just planet Earth? Do you think it's more like a simulation for us just to gain experience and
Yeah, it's like
knowledge?
what I've asked people before. They said there's many planets where there's life forms, and a lot of them are similar to us. A lot of them are different than us. But what I've heard a number of times, and from other therapists, to say that Earth is kind of like it's going for your thesis. The hardest thing in college, when they got to take years to get their thesis done before they get their become a doctor. My daughter, gosh, she's a doctor now, but she's a teacher, but she's gotten her doctorate and everything. And it took years and years and years and research and everything like that. Well, they say that some places you go to incarnate, they deal with emotional issues. Some places you go to deal with physical issues like, pain that you have to go through to learn. On Earth, you get them both, you know. And so some souls that have been other places and they come down to Earth for the first time, it's very difficult for them. They think it's going to be easy looking above, and they go down and they go, "Whoa, what did I get myself into here?" And it's very, very difficult. So I don't know if it's an ego thing for us earthlings or not, but the people that have chosen to incarnate on Earth, that a lot of them are very, very experienced, brave souls, because they thought, they thought they could come down and go through what we have to go through. It's like they say that you can learn on Earth in the short amount of time that you're here as much as you might if you're figuring time wise, in hundreds of years someplace else. But you learn it really kind of it's a little brutal, but at the same time there's that beauty that the Earth has that is very attractive to people on the other side. But the people from what I get so far from our research, is that in heaven, if you want to call it the afterlife, we exist as energy. But why we're there, because we've had all this experience in bodies and different things, depending on what our whim is in the day, we kind of can morph in and out of looking physical, of not, of just being pure energy. It's almost like every conceivable possibility.
Almost like you can create your own reality.
Yeah.
at will or whenever you want to.
And that's the thing, is because up there, what you think kind of instantly manifests, so to speak. And that's why that, when The Secret came out, uh, that whole process about, like you have something you want in your life and you want to become, as you give it thought and everything. And some of the souls come down here and they get frustrated because they're used to it being instant. And they go down here, it seems to be, everything's so thick and dense that for the thought to get through from the time of thought to the time of manifestation, it's sometimes years, before something comes to fruition. Where there, it's just like a piece of cake,
Right.
boom. It's easy that way. The thing that I found most interesting about the life between life experience is realizing, okay, I see how I can explain it. Okay, you're in the afterlife and you decide you want to come down and be born again. So you choose your body, you kind of choose what you want to work on, and then you figure out how hard, like say you have 100% of your soul energy when you're in heaven, and you decide how much of your soul energy you're going to embody in that earthly body to accomplish your mission. And most of the time when I ask that question, most of them will say 50, 60%. I get a few 80% because it's going to be a real tough life. But what that means is there's always part, like Dylan, there's always part of you that's up there. Okay, there's part of me that's up there. Okay. And what I witness over and over again, it's like this beautiful point when somebody's in heaven or they're in the afterlife, and I feel them merge with that part of themselves that's there. It's like and you would be surprised at how wise they become. Like some of the list of questions I'll start asking when they go, oh, I know the answer to that, and they'll give me the answer. Oh, and they start talking about themselves, their earth self in third person. And it blows people away because I record all this. And when they listen to back, they go, oh my God, I'm talking to myself like I'm somebody else. Like they would, if it was Dylan up there, they would go, what Dylan should be doing is this, if
Right.
he'd stop eating, if he would take better care of his body, this is this. And you realize that's yourself talking to yourself, your higher self. So, and what that means is, and I tell people this ahead of time, I say, if you have somebody in your life now that, say maybe you're dating somebody and you're just getting really close and you think it might be a soulmate or somebody you got married to, but you're not sure, or what's the reason this person's in your life, or if you have an antagonist that's in your life, like maybe a parent that's being really cruel to you and they're still alive, when you get up there, a lot of my clients will be able to talk, let's say, to their mom. They'll say, Mom, why are you being this way to my life? And they'll get the reasons why. And the mom will say, well, we agreed on this, daughter. I was going to be your mom when we went down, and I was going to do this because you needed to learn how to accept other people, or you needed to have more compassion, or something like this. So they come back out of that experience. They look at their mom or their dad or their antagonist totally different, and they realize it was to help them to see what they need to learn. So it's it's really I don't know, fascinating for them to get the scoop. And somehow they must be evolved at a point where God feels, or the universe feels that it's okay for them to know that right now. In other words, that they worked hard enough and they can come back down and see it that way. So
Right.
I have so many of my clients that finish being in the victim mode. They go, oh, and they start looking at things as challenges. Like, what can I learn from this very, very, very hard challenge? And it's a game changer for a lot of people, because they start, stop bitching about their life and start getting to work.
Right. And that's kind of a good way to live your life, right?
It
That
is.
from that perspective, or that mindset. Because I think you can accomplish a lot more in that regard. And like you said, you're not really playing the victim role anymore. You're just
Yeah.
taking it as a challenge, and this is what I'm supposed to go through and face. And
Yeah. And haven't we both read books or heard interviews about people that went through horrific experiences in their life, and once they're past it, they go, I wouldn't be the person I am now if I hadn't gone through that.
absolutely.
I wouldn't have the love or compassion that I have now if I hadn't gone through that.
I think
Uh,
most of us can probably even relate to some of our own experiences.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that they realize, when people come back from the experience, they realize that they're an immortal soul, that any pain or suffering they go through here is temporary, that it's usually for a reason. Um, when you think about the easiest example I give to people is how do we learn in life? It's the kid that touches a hot stove for the first time, never does that again, and it hurt for
Right.
just a second, but that was a whole lesson of teaching him to be careful, to
Yeah.
be, and to be more thoughtful of what you're going to do with your, where you put your hands, what do you do, um, we don't have all the answers. It's funny, the more we learn, the more it's like you get answers to questions and then a whole bunch of other questions come up again. But what I would say for people is the people that want to experience this, that there's enough therapists out there now that they could probably find one not too far from them, if not in their area. And there's tons of books out there that are, if they having a hard time with past life regression, Brian Weiss, he's kind of the guru of done so many thousands of, and he was one that went from a non-believer to a believer over the years that he did this. On my website, there's some videos of him on Oprah and different things. Even his daughter, he did a past life regression with his daughter. She had a physical ailment that got healed from her realizing that that it had come from a past life. So
Yeah, it's great work. It can change, your life on a physical level, emotional, spiritual. It offers hope. There's just a lot of great things that come with what kind of work you guys are doing.
yeah, I have not found one negative thing at all, not even to begin to be a negative thing. And anything that happens to people on the other side, there was one case of a person that thought that Satan, that he started freaking out and he goes, "Oh my God, the devil's going to get me." And we're trained to do that. The therapist, we say, "Okay, just calm down for a minute. Now, maybe that's the devil, maybe it's not. But I want you to get a little closer and look at him like you're watching him on a screen or something, and describe him to me." And the person on there it was the devil's head had the horns coming out and the crazy stuff like this. And from the way down, it was a teacher or a master, and then it dissolved, and the teacher was just having fun with them because he actually was a Baptist minister who had preached hell and damnation most of his life. And so this teacher up there was just saying, "Hey, look, we wanted to give you hell because you've been giving people hell all these years." So it was a big, so people kind of find that out. Like, if there is such a thing as hell, the closest thing I can say is to earth, of like what you have to go through, the awful things that people do, and that there's a good guy, good cop, bad cop kind of thing going on down here because it helps us kind of learn by what we have to go through. So whatever we mock up or something, there is, in a sense, in this reality, without being over there, there's kind of a hell on earth kind of thing going on,
Right.
and so in a sense it exists that way. But once you get to the other side, it's just love and light. And at least in our experience, I'm gonna say it's just from our research, and maybe we'll find out something later. We keep trying, but so far so good. Oh,
Fascinating
and
stuff.
I forgot to mention
What?
Leo, the one that came to me with the 26 he was going seizures a day.
Mhm.
After our session up there, one of the teachers had him go to a place of rejuvenation, and he saw this giant, like oak tree kind of thing that was emanating all this color. And so he's in trance. And I say, "Well, what's your master telling you?" And he said, "Well, the guide told him to go and put himself against this tree." So he went there and he laid against it. He did not want to leave. I said, "Okay, you done now?" And he says, "No, I'm going to stay here." So I says, "Okay, I'm just going to be quiet. When you're done, let me know." So I just was be quiet, doing some notes or anything. And about 10 minutes later, he goes, "Okay, I'm ready." That made such an impact on him. When he went home, he kept drawing trees. He sent me one. He said, "I'm not an artist, but and he's having an average of about 3 seizures a day instead of 26.
Wow.
So I'm gonna see him again the next time I'm in Sacramento, and we're gonna do some more work, see if we can, maybe get him all better. You know,
That's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Well, I just feel like there's so many things we could have touched on that we didn't get
Oh,
a chance
is.
to. I could have 5 episodes with you. You're impressive. Uh,
It's fun.
hey, Regan, where can we find the great work that you're doing, and how can we get a hold of you?
Okay. Well, it's pretty easy. This is an easy website to remember. It's visittheafterlife.com. Visittheafterlife.com. There's some videos on there. I actually have a video up there now of a young lady. They're making a documentary on this process now, and there's a whole session of women going through this process, and people have to be real patient because there's a lot of dead time. There's a lot of time when the therapist is just sitting there and she's having her experience going back and forth, but it's kind of a real life thing about what they could, similar to what most people experience, where she goes from a past life to there, sees people, gets questions answered, goes before the council and everything. There's also a few talks by Dr. Newton on there, where he's talking about this process, how he discovered it and everything before he passed away, and there's some videos that were on YouTube about that. And then on the past life regression, some people, they want to just get their foot wet a little bit. And they go, well, before I do this other thing, which seems kind of scary, let me just do a past life regression. Well, there's some good videos on there about that. And also on my website, they can order my book, 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven, which is my account of my personal experience being on there. And it'll let other people kind of see how God has been, from step to step, has actually been guiding them somewhere. If they really look back and they realize this, they'll be able to kind of put the pieces together and they go, oh my God, if I hadn't done this, oh my God, and this, and then where they are now, and they start getting an idea that this is all meant to be. Okay. So they can order the book on there. And then I just have an ebook that I just published on Amazon that's Reincarnation is Real. And what's nice on there is, so they don't have to look at all the internet and do the research. We'll be talking, giving some information, and then they can click and they can go to a video that's about that. And some of them are about the children who remember past lives and other people. And there's some stuff about Oprah interviews and things like that. So
Nice.
For people that just want to get an overview and want to start to believe, they can see. And what I tell people is, now we've had 50,000 cases that we've done alone through the Newton Institute. And in research, the whole thing about research and science is that you do something and then you try to get it repeated and it happen over and over again. Well, we've had 50,000 of these. So how much more proof does somebody want to know that this is a real phenomena and that this is something that needs to be paid attention to, but still, there'll be people that, and maybe in this lifetime, it's not for them. It's not for them to believe, and maybe it's not. But for the people that are out there that kind of have this inner nudge that something is there that they might benefit by, and that's what we're here for. So it's, visit theafterlife.com. The book's 3 hours, 33 minutes in heaven. It's available in a whole bunch of different bookstores, but mostly people go to Amazon to get it. And then only on Amazon is the Reincarnation is Real.
That's beautiful, man. Thanks. Hey, thanks again, Regan, for being on the show.
You're welcome, Dylan.